On today's World Insight, vote of confidence with a big turnout at the 2020 China International Fair for Trade and Services, or CIFTIS, the nation's post-pandemic boom and prognosis, in the words of the United Nations resident coordinator in China.
As you can see from the case of China, countries would eventually come out of this crisis. The world will come out of this crisis.
And a national tribute to heroes in China's battle against the COVID-19 pandemic.
President Xi Jinping, he mentioned one word which impressed me very much. He said we should take the people's health and safety to the first priority.
Here's our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. Today, we are wading deeper into the first major international economic and trade event held by China since the COVID-19 outbreak, the 2020 China International Fair for Trade and Services. On its fifth day, the big and steady turnout at this event has sparked hope and some confidence. Last Saturday, the first full day of the exhibition, a total of 95,000 visitors were at the event, with only 60,000 allowed into the venue at any given time, in keeping with social distancing rules. The fair comes as China's economy has largely restarted, despite the devastating blow to many industries from a months-long shutdown. The good news is that China has gone weeks without reporting any new locally transmitted COVID-19 cases. So how well did China deal with this health crisis, and how can we turn to our normal lives? Earlier, on the sideline of the fair, I asked Dr. Babatunde Ahonsi, the UN resident coordinator in China, for his insights. Tell me more about not long after China struggled against the pandemic, and finally we have such a mega-scale event today. What does that say to you as a public servant?
Now the world is faced with an unprecedented health, economic and social crisis triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic. Our world has been upended. And yes, it is first and foremost a health crisis, but dealing with this crisis also has created and is creating major social and economic disruptions. It's exacerbating existing vulnerabilities and inequalities. But we do now know from China's experience that it is a multidimensional crisis, but the way to get out of it is to first of all deal with the health crisis, the health component.
Upfront, efficiently.
Yeah. So once you are able to put in place the public health measures, the type that China has done so successfully, and you contain the epidemic, the outbreak, in your country, in your community, then you can very slowly, build back out of it better. You can begin to, in a phased manner, begin to restore normalcy to your economy, to production, to social life, and then you can begin to talk about post-recovery measures. But while doing that, you have to. So the first point is, containment and control of the outbreak is part and parcel of getting your economy back to speed and restoring normalcy. The world was caught completely unprepared. And, it also shows you that the health, the educational, the relations, the way we treat men and women, boys and girls, the economic, the environmental, they're all interrelated.
Absolutely.
I think what COVID has shown is the need for and the case for really seriously every country is seriously pursuing sustainable development.
How come we only realize this, or most of us only realize this when there's rainy days?
There is always the Chinese say, every crisis represents an opportunity. So in a sense, this could be a blessing in disguise. We are saying, as we seek to come out of this crisis, and as we can see from the case of China, countries would eventually come out of this crisis. The world will come out of this crisis. But we must not go back to doing the kinds of things, maintaining the systems, the same systems and processes that got us here in the first place. We must build back better, as we say in the UN. We must address all those vulnerabilities, all those systemic deficits that led us here. It's a situation where a virus that is not even that potent can completely disrupt the world like this. It just shows that we have not been prioritizing the right things.
What kind of call would you share with us right now for people to realize how important it is to work together? We see a very shattered world, a very divided and rhetorical world these days, unprecedented to me, at least, even. So, Dr. Wenhong, your message?
I think, my message is a very straightforward one. The world is so interconnected that, and one of the things that COVID-19 has shown us is that we are only as strong as the weakest link in the chain. And
I like that.
If you want to look at the world, a great public servant in Singapore used an analogy of a boat, okay? If you look at the world system or the United Nations system, and you say, okay, there are 193 member states that make up the United Nations. I think the way these 193 member states, this is the way the Singaporean leader put it, professor put it, these 193 member states are not 193 separate boats. They are actually 193 what do you call them, cabins within this big boat. Now, if there is a fire outbreak in any part of the boat, will you remain in your cabin and say it is not my problem? What is going to happen is we will have to run out of our individual cabins and try and do what? Put out
fire. Yeah.
Put out the fire. Are we going to be asking the question, who started the fire? What is it that you did that led to this fire outbreak? Our first priority will be to put out the fire. Because if we don't put out the fire, the entire boat will be burned and it will go up in flames and will sink, will drown and die. That is the way the world is today. And that is really the essence of sustainable development. And in order to achieve sustainable development, you need global solidarity. You need international cooperation, because many of these problems, are not problems that you can contain within national boundaries.
How come, sir, such a clear logic in such a wonderful example you just presented, hard to understand? How come politicians within their national borders are still thinking so different from what you just explained? It's such a simple logic, isn't it? It's very difficult to analyze these sort of issues. At the end of the day, in general, decision makers, especially of the political type, tend to think in terms of the short term. Sometimes their horizon is not more than 4 years. The issues we are talking about are long-term mega trends, mega issues that you can only address over several years, decades, with sustained action. But the only way you can do that is to take, one, you take a long-term view, and you keep, I always say, you keep your eyes on the prize. The prize is a more prosperous, a more inclusive, a fairer world,
and a healthier environment. Because if we destroy the planet and we won't have the economic prosperity that we desire, we won't have the social harmony that we desire. So, you know, development is a long-term process. It's actually a process. I sometimes say, and this again is not original to me, you know, in terms of sustainable development, if your frame of reference is sustainable development, you can't really call any country developed. All countries are in the journey of sustainable development to ensure the balance, the harmony between the social, the economic, and the environmental. Every country is in a process. Of course, you can divide up countries in terms of low-income countries, middle-income countries, high-income countries. That can make sense. But in terms of development, a process in which we are all getting better and inequalities are reducing and opportunities are being evenly spread. That is a long-term journey.
You grew up Nigeria.
Yes, yes.
Very poor when you were little.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And politics, very complicated.
Very, very difficult. Not oriented to serving the well-being of the people. Yeah.
Then you went to the UK to study. Came back as an academic on a university campus with almost the very first laptop on campus.
Yep.
Proud of who you are, while at the same time extremely hardworking. And then move on to public service, working for international organizations, and now eventually at the UN 6 years ago. You talk about the long term, looking at the short term with long term. Tell me how it could happen, when it happened to you.
You know, my personal life illustrates the value of having a long-term, not just the value, but you know, the rationality of it all, that you have to look. You know, everything you do now is part of contributing to a longer-term outcome, you know. And I've seen it in my own life and in the lives of nations and countries where I've worked, that, you know, the things you do now are very important for what will happen, basically shape what will happen later. And when you look at, when I come to, and my life in China over the last 3 years, almost 3 years and 8 months, also illustrates that.
Tell me more about
when you look at the story of China in 40 years, I tell people I've learned 3 things from being in China. The first is the power of long-term thinking, having a plan, okay? And then diligently, what I call sustained, disciplined implementation of the plan. That is what has got China to where it is today. It's a large part of the success story. Okay. The second element of what I've learned in China is the fact that the system has an element of accountability for results built within it at different levels. So it's not enough to have a plan and to be hardworking about implementing the plan, but you also track results at every level. And people's career, the way they are seen, whether they are successful or not, depends on what they have contributed to the outcomes, the results. So performance-based management of a system, you know, so you track results. That is also very, that's one of the things I've learned. The third thing I've learned about China, from living and working in China, is that, you know, you have to build, you have to capacitate society. You know, you have to put in place the enablers of development. So infrastructure, the sustained investment in infrastructure. When you look at some of the infrastructure that China has in transportation, in energy, world class. In fact, better in many instances than that of some high-income countries. You look at the high-speed rail network of China. You look at the ICT backbone of China. I mean, the digital economy. I mean, China is basically like the headquarters, I would say the hub for e-commerce, you know, increasingly. I mean, look at what China has done with just investing in infrastructure. The other enabler is the investment in human capital. It's not enough to have good roads and to have ports sorted out, have energy sorted out, have telecommunications and so on sorted out. You also have to have the human capital to take advantage of that. So those three elements, but those are the results of policies. Having the right combination of social, economic, and political policies, and then implementing them. I am a beneficiary of policies. I was born into a very poor family. In fact, my father was going to school at the same time that we, his children, were going to school. Now, but I was born in a part of Nigeria where the government chose to implement free education at primary and to some extent secondary level, as well as free health care. So my mom had 7 of us. None died, because there was free health care. Immunization was free. We had health visitors that came and checked on your health as a baby. In those days, they weighed the baby. Also, I still have my health card that my dad kept for me. So, policy. So that's, education was what made it possible for me to be here today. So I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in countries that have invested heavily in women's education, girls' education.
Policies make huge difference. And
then you see, if you equalize educational opportunities for boys and girls, the way China has done, and we have seen it in other countries, Malaysia and so on, you will find that 10, 15 years later, you reap huge benefits, dividend, what we call dividend, education dividend. And you can see it in China. The female labor force participation rate is above the average for upper middle income countries. Because in this country, there is no gender disparity in access to and participation in education at every level. There are very few countries like that.
But do you think we are walking back with our progress? In other words, are we still progressing, or are we setting back? If you look at the headlines of news these days, people also ask that question, whether our world goes in cycles, progressive cycles, or cycles of progress and cycles of setback.
The complex nature of human evolution is that there will be periods of adjustment, of crisis that we have to respond to. And that in coming out of, and that is the sort of perspective the UN Secretary General has taken, that in coming out of this crisis, we come out better, stronger, more cooperative, more driven by integrated perspectives. So I think, there will be cycles, there are always cycles, but the underlying trend, the overall trend is to go in the direction of progress. I do believe that the world would eventually, come out of COVID. The thing is, we have to come out better. We must not, the so-called next normal or new normal cannot and should not be a continuation of the things we used to do in the past. We should not be in a situation where the work that a woman does.
Common sense, once again.
And you find that, as I was saying, 70 to 90% of the health workers are women. How many of them are in decision-making position within the health sector? I'm not saying outside of the health sector. Even within the health system. 70 to 90, in some countries 90%, around 70% of workers in the health system are women. And less than 30% of them are in decision-making positions. No society is sustainable with those kind of inequities and inequalities. And that is why we have not coped well with COVID-19. Why will you strip your health system of the capacity to detect the virus and to be able to respond? Okay? To be able to respond. And yet when things become routinized and normal, we sometimes forget these fundamentals. What COVID-19 has done to us is to go back to and focus on the fundamentals. Ultimately, as I keep saying, your well-being and my well-being are interconnected. At the level of individuals, so it is at the level of nations and communities. And I've said it, I've seen it in my own life. You know, progress for me is a cumulative process. It's a cumulative process. The progress that really sustains is progress that builds on previous progress. Right. And then it becomes much more difficult to reverse them. But if you come and try to shake up the system and you want to create a revolution, and it's not sustainable because you're not building it on something. You have to build how you go forward on the basis of what you are doing right now.
Dr. Babatunde Ahonsi, who is the resident coordinator of the United Nations in China. You're watching World Insight. Coming up on our program, a tribute to heroes in China's battle against the COVID-19 pandemic. The details after this break. Welcome back. This is World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The Chinese President Xi Jinping on Tuesday paid tribute to recipients of the Medal of the Republic and the National Honorary Title for their outstanding contributions to China's fight against COVID-19 pandemic. On August the 11th, President Xi signed a presidential order to recognize the special contributions of 4 Chinese individuals in the fight against COVID-19. Today, Dr. Jung Nanshan, a renowned infectious disease expert, was presented with the Medal of the Republic, the highest national honor. 3 others, Zhang Boli, Zhang Lingyu, and also Chen Wei, received the honorary title People's Hero for their efforts in developing treatments and vaccines. Another 1,500 people, as well as hundreds of institutions, were also honored for their contribution against the pandemic. Earlier, I had the chance to talk to Dr. Jung Nanshan. Here are his thoughts and contribution to the cause. You were in Wuhan on January the 18th evening, if I understand right, together with some of the other experts invited by the Health Commission.
Yeah.
Then you went with some of them to different places in Wuhan, the market,
yes,
a hospital, Jingyantan, and also the Wuhan CDC. And then you guys had a discussion in the afternoon, if I understand, on the 19th, about what to propose and whom to propose to. So what was exactly the nature of that discussion on the 19th January afternoon? At that time, were possibility of human-to-human transmission being discussed? And who did you say things about that to, Professor?
I just asked some questions. One, how exactly how many patients are there in Wuhan being infected? And the second, whether they had some patient dying. And the third, whether they have medical staff being infected.
And then you talk about human-to-human transmission on the 20th in an interview with CCTV, if I remember right, Professor. But before that, did you talk to the policymakers about human-to-human transmission possibilities?
Yes, yes, I think so.
Okay.
So in the morning of the 20th January, so I have a meeting with our VIP person, and I talk with that. I think that once the human-to-human transmission happened, that will be a very serious situation, serious disease.
Okay.
I'm glad our governor and the VIP, they accept that.
Professor Zhong, another important question
and
is...
Then subsequent, and then they had taken some very strong action.
Talking about strong action, Professor Zhong, the lockdown of the city of Wuhan, that was beginning to be implemented on the 23rd of January. Now, who proposed the lockdown of Wuhan? You or somebody else, or collectively?
Yeah.
And whom do you propose that to?
I think...
what time did you propose it?
Well, I haven't discussed with my group, because I'm the head of this expert committee group. So haven't discussed with them. So most of us agree with that. So we should set up a policy of not down Wuhan. I mentioned about the principle is don't go to Wuhan and don't leave Wuhan. So that's what my subjection.
So it is a collective proposal, if I understand right, you just said. Is that?
Of course, of course. After two months of practice, it's like totally correct. So in this way, I remember, I think so the President Xi Jinping, he mentioned one word which impressed me very much. He said, we should take the people's health and safety to the first priority. So in other words, this kind of action will make some, of course, great impact of economy. However, the leader said, the people's health and safe is the first. So I suppose the decision is correct.
Professor Zhong, if you were asked by, let's just say, your colleagues in Italy, your colleagues in New York, your colleagues in California, and your colleagues possibly in some of the Asian countries, what would you suggest to them? Will the China way, as you earlier pointed out, since the 23rd of January, be able to work for them?
I think principally, I think it should be. So because they at the moment, all the foreign countries like in Europe or as well as in United States, they have set up this kind of policy. So they call that the lockdown, the cities or some others. But exactly, so not down a city is not useful. So you block the change, the communication between the cities and other cities is not new. It's not the main point. So you have to so I just now mentioned about so keep distancing. So people inside the city, as I heard from some of the foreign countries, said, well, we lock down the city, and then inside the city, people just, in particular young people, just join together, attending parties or some banquet or meeting. It doesn't work. It's not locked down. So we lock down. The concept will be going to the community setting. So keep at home and to avoid to contact other people and not attending the meeting and not attending the banquet. That's very important.
Professor Zhong, during SARS, you are the one standing up and say, now, there's something wrong. We need to correct this. And this time, again, you are the one of the early ones among all the experts to speak out and speak out with a strong impact. And how would you be able to propose in a way that you think policymakers would accept for the benefits of the common good, Professor Zhong?
As you know, the events of coronavirus infection actually happened 3 times in this century. So the first time is SARS in the year 2003. And the second time is MERS in 2012. And then this is the 3rd time. As compared with the last 2 events, this kind of disease is more infectious. I mean, more has a higher infectivity. So although, I mean, the mortality is not as high as the SARS and MERS. So this is something, as a doctor or clinician, I respect the fact.
Besides Dr. Jung Nanshan, there are other 1,500 individuals who are also honored today. One of them is Dr. Jiang Wenhong, the head of the Shanghai COVID-19 medical team. He is well known for his outspoken style. He has been providing enormous amount of information for the public about COVID-19. In August, Dr. Jiang, with 7 other doctors across the country, were awarded with the Medal of Chinese Medical Workers, according to a list released recently. Ever since the pandemic began, Dr. Jiang has been working at the front lines. He also sent out very helpful information on how to deal with COVID-19, both physically and psychologically, on social media platforms. I've talked to him twice, in fact, over the past few months, and enjoy every second of the chats. It seems things are getting much better here in China. But how to control things in a reasonable level? Well, work and life are coming back to normal. That's probably always a big question for every decision maker.
We are living in a new normal state already. It's not normal, it's just a new normal. Whatever measures are taken by countries around the world, the overall goal is to control the epidemic situation with a controllable range to avoid the overwhelming of medical system and the excessive mortality, I think. If the epidemic surge again, we need to trigger the warning point and the measure would then upgraded again. So this is the basic strategy we can take. And I think actually today maybe the epidemic level is not so high. So we recently actually, I think we have almost back 90% of the normal state. Yeah.
You've been fighting COVID-19 for quite a few months. What has China done right, and what lessons have China learned so far? In retrospect, what do you think about all of these very important questions?
Different cities, actually, the level of the epidemics is totally different. Just like Wuhan, we just take a very strict strategy to control the peak. So you know that almost 60,000 medical health care works, we just went to Wuhan together to fight the peak. However, in the other city, just like Shanghai, the epidemic is not so severe. The Shanghai government just took a more lighter control measures. Stay at home were not mandatory, and the citizens could go out for food, shopping, banks, hospitals, and etc. Now, all life necessities facilities remained open for normal life. So I think in China, we just take the different strategies individually according to the epidemics in China. So therefore, in fact, in the other cities of China, as the epidemics, you know that today were all controlled very well. So today, I think in the near future, we just take the similar strategy.
Yeah. So it seems that Professor Zhang, you're suggesting we need to minor adjust it all the time. Once things change, we need to act swiftly and efficiently. Is that what you're suggesting?
The world, actually, we know that it will almost before the vaccine launched, we know that we have to live with the virus, and we actually are far away from the eradication of the disease. So among which I think we should share the experience and strengthen global cooperation today in the healthcare and the research. Of course, also the vaccination research, we should work together. So actually, we all have learned lots of lessons from other countries. And of course, we should exchange the experience among different countries. So in this new normal, I think in this new normal state of the world, we should all fight wisely, toughly, and with solidarity. It's very important. Yeah.
What has China learned when it comes to lessons, Professor Zhang?
Before the vaccination launch, I think we have to learn how to live with the virus. Today, I think in all the world, we have lots of cases in the other countries. Today, but in China, we still have some sporadic cases. So today, we just take the strategies. Every city, we should understand the necessity to take appropriate measures. Even we just have several cases in some cities. However, I think we still need to take just like the strategies, just like taking the social distancing, and I think it still is very important.
Yeah.
So today, I think, I think in China, we just take the whole, citizens, we work together, we stop the invasion of the virus. So the concept and the voluntarily to cooperate is actually the Chinese version of the herd immunity. So today, we just have a version of herd immunity. Our concept of the herd immunity, we just to work together in every part of the society work together to stop the invasion of the virus and stop the transmission of the virus.
Professor Zhang, on the other hand, we have seen the virus mutate, and things are getting a little bit more complicated than before, to say the least. You see some strange symptoms coming from children in Europe and North America. So what do you make of the realities now? What does that mean for China's control and prevention?
Today, actually, in China, in all the children, the disease is not so severe. However, we noticed that it maybe that it's a very complicated side of this virus. However, according to our analysis, we do not see any remarkable mutations for the virus. So now answering to your question, I think that indeed it has some reports of the lots of some complications in the COVID in children, just like some very complicated. So I mean the syndrome happened in the children. However, I think according to our now from what I know, most of these children seem to have developed just like the syndrome. I mean just Kawasaki-like disease. I think it's something like that of inflammatory syndrome. So actually, our colleagues from the United States, they just assume that this concerning phenomenon is like inflammatory reaction due to the COVID-19, the virus. So actually, if we just take some treatment to suppress the inflammatory response, I think also we can control the disease. So I actually feel very strange that in China we do not have so many children cases related with Kawasaki syndrome. So, however, I think we still need a lot of research to control the phenomenon of this disease. Yeah.
China eventually has to open up. Now we have border control, just like many other economies. But with rising cases in some of the other economies, what is China likely to do? Because we've been able to keep the country pretty much free from COVID-19, at least generally speaking. So what are we going to do with others' numbers are still rising, but eventually we have to open up to them, right? So how can we handle? On the one hand, we are doing such a great job because the number is so low. On the other hand, just as a result of that, we are facing this very difficult dilemma.
We do not have so many cases right now. However, maybe we still have another wave, because you know that maybe in the forthcoming several months, still the whole world will be reopened. So I think we fear about the next wave for that. And actually today, according to the situation in China, maybe we can return to the normal state. However, we still fear the second wave. So in the future, I think two kinds of strategy we will take. One strategy we will protect the vulnerable population, just like the elderly people, and also of course some patients who have the fundamentally disease. So I think another strategy what we taken, we will strengthen our public health system. If once there's an imported case, we will control the disease immediately. So this is what our strategy. So I know that there should be a next second wave in the world. Of course, the China, I think we just one part of the world. I think we should control the next wave because we have lots of experience which we have taken from the first wave. I think the strategy will work for us to control the second wave in China. Yeah.
So now we see the virus is spreading to more developing economies. Well, it is still running wild in some of the developed economies. So Professor Zhang, are we facing an ever more challenging situation?
Actually, in the previously several weeks, I have a talk with some people, some doctors from the developing country. I noticed that the situation in their countries actually is very severe. I know that if we just want to the people stay at home, take the social distancing, but know that in developing countries, if they stay at home, I think they cannot make money. So it will be very dangerous for their daily life. So today, I just have some suggestion for them, because in the first wave in China and also in the world, we noticed that. So the vulnerable people, the elderly people, and the people are very weak, they should protect the vulnerable populations. And this is one side. The other side, I think, the people are young and who can resist the virus, they can go to work. However, I think nutrition is very important. I just want to have the recommendation for the younger people who will go back to work. I think they should keep their nutrition very well. If they keep the nutrition state very well, I think they can resist the virus.
You are a straight talker. You know, people love that. People love you are being genuine and frank. And sometimes even a little bit controversial. They even call you Papa Zhang, Zhang Baba, huh? Just to show their love to you. What do you make of the communication skills public health officials and also medical scholars like you need to have now because of the so-called new normal?
Actually, I myself is very strange about the situation what I face today. I know that today I think almost every Chinese know me very well. I think maybe I don't know why the style says just like me is so welcome in China. I think it's a very frankly talk and maybe actually in my daily life in my hospital I always speak like this style. I think as a doctor I should tell the truth to the citizen. So today I think I'm very glad that all the Chinese they agree with me. What is very important I think is just tell the citizens the truth. So this is the key of the communications. Actually, I don't know what will happen in the next stage. Maybe one day, and the people in China they do not welcome anymore. However, I will tell the truth. That I think this is what I will do in my future. Yes.
My earlier chats with Dr. Jiang Wenhong. And that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei on behalf of the team. Thanks for watching and bye for now.